imagine having the power to, legally fire your king in the 16th century.
Right, just a built-in constitutional mechanism to depose a ruler.
Exactly. Because while European monarchs were busy consolidating all this absolute power under the banner of divine right, a nomadic democracy in Central Asia had already built a highly sophisticated system specifically for that.
It's incredible. And today we're looking at a historical landscape that, frankly, defies all the conventional rules of statehood, map-making, and power.
Yeah, which forces us to ask a pretty uncomfortable question for modern historians. Is a nation defined by physical borders on a piece of paper, or is it defined by an internal, continuous spiritual code?
Right, the internal identity versus the external map.
Welcome to a deep dive tailored specifically for you, the listener, who, loves peeling back the layers of established history to see the mechanics underneath. Today, we are exploring a really fascinating lecture and historical reconstruction by the New-Spheric mission.
And this is specifically regarding the true history of Karakalpak statehood.
Right. And right up front, we should define what we mean by a New-Spheric approach, because they aren't just looking at who signed what treaty, right?
No, not at all. The New Sphere refers to the sphere of human thought. So this mission reconstructs history by tracking the survival of cultural memory, linguistic codes, and spiritual identity over millennia.
Because history is usually written by the victors who get to draw the modern maps.
Yeah.
But the New-Spheric mission focuses on the underlying currents that actually outlast those maps.
Precisely. They synthesize these ancient genealogical structures with military epics to recover a narrative that has largely been well overwritten.
So our mission today is to trace this sweeping epic. We're going to examine the mechanics of their ancient genealogical codes, their early democracy, and the sheer logistics of a monumental 17th century military triumph.
And of course, the devastating political assassination that followed.
Yeah. And finally, we'll look at the New-Spheric mission's conclusions on the geopolitical price of preserving your original identity.
It's a fascinating study in structural resilience, really. We're looking at a people who maintain their core identity against just extraordinary pressure.
So let's start with the foundation. The New-Spheric mission traces the roots of the Karakalpak people back through these ancient shezhire-codes.
Right, which are basically these highly rigid oral genealogical records.
Exactly. And they trace the Kara component of the Karakalpak name to terms like Kara-Bas in the Sumerian era and Kara-Muyten in the Hurrian-Mitanni era.
Which is a massive jump back in time.
It is. And I have to stop right there and voice the obvious skepticism. I mean, connecting a 16th century Central Asian confederation to ancient Mesopotamia, it sounds like an impossible historical leap.
It does.
How does the New-Spheric mission bridge a gap of several millennia without it just being, a random linguistic coincidence?
It's a very fair point of skepticism. The key is understanding how a shezhire actually functions in a nomadic society. In sedentary civilizations, history is recorded in stone monuments or state libraries, right? Nomadic societies use an oral ledger, but it's highly rigid.
So it's not just a list of names.
No, exactly. The shezhire is a living legal document. It dictates alliances, grazing rights, military obligations, and it's passed down with extreme fidelity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the Kara identifier, which in various ancient contexts can mean great, northern, or the foundational core, functions like a resilient piece of cultural DNA.
Okay, I see.
It isn't that a Sumerian city simply packed up and relocated to the steppes. It's that the foundational root concept migrated, evolved, and was fiercely protected within this oral ledger over thousands of years.
Until it surfaced later in formations like the Kara-Turk+KALPAK political union by the 6th century.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. So the shezhire acts almost like a decentralized blockchain for cultural identity. You can trace the lineage of the code even as the physical location of the network shifts.
That's a great way to put it.
And that brings us to the second half of the name, Kalpak. I think the standard assumption is that it just refers to the traditional hat, right?
Right. But the source makes it very clear this was a highly functional political tool. Think of the Kalpak less as a piece of clothing and more like a modern passport.
Or like a military uniform in a world without border checkpoints.
Exactly. In the really fluid, rapidly shifting world of the Eurasian steppes, wearing the Kalpak was a visible, immediate declaration of your political and spiritual allegiance.
It was a marker of constitutional inclusion.
Yes.
And what did that constitution actually look like? Because the New-Spheric mission completely dismantles this long-standing myth that the Karakalpaks were a people without a Khan.
Right, which is the oldest imperial playbook in the world, by the way.
Claim a region is disorganized and leaderless to justify conquering it.
Yes, the old myth of the savage frontier. But the new Spheric mission brings the historical receipts here. They specifically document Khans like Sultan Shakim, who was elevated in 1578.
And Barak Sultan, right, in 1582. So they had formal state architecture. But the actual mechanics of their governance are what truly set them apart.
Absolutely.
Because having a Khan is one thing, but they operated under what the source calls the democracy of Beys. The Beys were these influential leaders, essentially clan elders.
But they weren't just an advisory council.
Right, and this is my favorite part. It's kind of like a modern corporate board of directors or an early parliamentary vote of no confidence. If a Khan violated his oath, the Council of Beys had the legal authority to depose him.
What's fascinating here is that this system was far more just and balanced than the absolute monarchies developing elsewhere in the world at the time.
But how did that actually work in practice? I mean, it's not like they had a parliament building where they cast paper ballots.
Well, the mechanism was entirely structural and military. In this nomadic system, the Khan didn't possess a massive independent royal army that was loyal only to him. His military power was basically an aggregate of the levies provided by the constituent tribes, and those tribes answered to their respective Beys.
So if the Khan broke the social contract...
The Beys didn't just write a strongly worded letter. They simply withdrew their military forces and their tax contributions. The Khan would instantly find himself as a general without an army.
It's brilliant. It's an institutionalized rapid recall mechanism, a hard check on absolute power.
Right. It's a system built entirely on mutual dependency.
So the Khan needs the Beys for force projection, and the Beys need the Khan for centralized strategic command.
Which creates a remarkably cohesive society. Because when the system does decide to mobilize, it mobilizes with incredible unity.
And that leads us directly to their golden era. What happens when this highly democratic system rallies behind a leader who actually knows how to leverage it?
Enter Abdülgafar Khan in the early 17th century.
Right. And the sources highlight his pedigree heavily. He is a descendant of the Shabani Koshim line, son of Baba Sultan, and a direct descendant of Abulkar Khan.
And pedigree is currency in this political landscape. Abdülgafar's lineage provided the unquestionable legitimacy needed to unite the factions.
But legitimacy only gets you into the room, right?
Exactly. Military competence is what keeps you there. And Abdülgafar's capability is tested in a defining crucible in 1603.
Yes. The 1603 battle against the Kazakh sultans, Isim and Bahadur. The New Spheric mission uses the term gajagaj to describe this conflict.
Meaning a fiercely matched, just grinding stalemate.
And it lasts for 12 days. I really want to drill down to the logistics of that because in nomadic warfare, battles are usually about mobility, right?
Well,
Feinting, retreating, rapid cavalry strikes.
exactly.
A 12-day stationary battle means something is fundamentally broken down in the standard playbook. It's like a grueling, unending heavyweight boxing match.
It means both sides are fighting for a strategic prize that they absolutely cannot afford to abandon, and neither side can achieve a decisive flanking maneuver.
The logistics of that must have been a nightmare.
Oh, unimaginable. Sustaining a medieval army in continuous combat for nearly 2 weeks. You have the expenditure of arrows, the constant need for fresh water for tens of thousands of horses.
The management of the wounded.
Right, and the rapid rotation of vanguard units so the front line doesn't completely collapse from sheer physical exhaustion.
Which completely shatters the myth of these disorganized tribes.
It requires an incredibly high level of centralized command.
But on the 13th day, Abdülgafar Khan's forces finally break the stalemate. Total victory.
Yes.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The victory on the battlefield is just the setup for the geopolitical earthquake that follows. He unites Turkestan, Seram, Andijan, and Aksakent, and then he declares Tashkent as the capital of his state.
That is a massive flex of political and military muscle.
Right. Why is taking Tashkent such a big deal economically?
Well, Tashkent is an ancient oasis city. And for a nomadic consideration, controlling an oasis city fundamentally changes your economic baseline.
Because nomadic economies are usually pretty volatile.
Exactly. They rely on livestock, which can be wiped out by a single harsh winter. But by claiming Tashkent, Abdülgafar Khan gains control of the Sirdarya watershed.
And it's a major node on the Silk Road trade routes.
Right. So he suddenly has access to a sedentary agricultural tax base, grain reserves to feed his armies over the winter, and urban craftsmen to manufacture armor and weapons at scale.
He effectively upgraded the entire operating system of the Karakalpak state.
He's not just a powerful warlord on the steppe anymore. He has the economic engine required to project imperial power across all of Central Asia.
But history shows us that when you disrupt the geopolitical balance that aggressively, the established powers don't just, congratulate you.
No, they definitely do not.
If they can't beat your logistics and your heavy cavalry in a 12-day battle, they change the rules of engagement.
They resort to asymmetrical warfare.
So we move forward to the Hijri year 1013, which is roughly 1604 or 1605. Abdülgafar Khan is resting at a place called Karakalpaks.
And crucially, the Newspheric mission notes he is resting without his main army.
Why would he do that?
Well, this was standard for nomadic leadership during peacetime. He was probably managing his own flocks, overseeing local administration, maybe hunting.
So he felt secure.
He had every reason to. He had just shattered his primary rivals the previous year and held the most powerful economic hub in the region.
But the defeated sultans, Asim and Bahadur, launch a cowardly dawn raid. They manage to infiltrate the camp, burst into the Khan's tent, and murder him in his sleep by slicing his stomach open with a sword.
It's an incredibly brutal, intimate assassination.
It completely bypasses the battlefield. They essentially decapitated the state while it was resting.
Which is the ultimate pragmatic, albeit completely dishonorable solution to a military problem they couldn't solve conventionally.
But the physical assassination was immediately followed by a massive ideological campaign, right?
It had to be. You cannot hold power simply by murdering a popular, democratically backed leader in his sleep. You have to control the narrative of why he deserved it.
So the historical spin doctors get to work. The descendants of the Tokaramur line start broadcasting this propaganda that the Shaybanid Abdülgafar was a, quote, false Khan.
Yes.
And I want to pause here because the source material explicitly corrects a really common modern misinterpretation. Looking at this through a 21st century map, modern readers might see this as an ethnic war, Kazakhs versus Karakalpaks.
But the Newspheric mission notes that this was entirely a dynastic struggle.
Exactly. It sounds more like a ruthless Game of Thrones-style power grab between noble houses.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, applying modern concepts of ethno-nationalism to 17th century nomadic politics completely distorts the reality of what happened.
It wasn't an ethnic clash.
No, this was a conflict between noble houses,
Yeah.
the descendants of Tokaramur vying against the descendants of Shaybani, Adij, and Emir Timur. It was a battle for the throne and control of the tax revenue, not a war of ethnic annihilation.
So instead of a war between two distinct nations, it's more like a hostile corporate takeover where the ruling board is violently liquidated.
And the people living under these houses were a really complex tapestry of overlapping lineages.
But the aftermath of this assassination fractures the Karakalpak political union, doesn't it? Because they operate on that decentralized democracy of Beys structure.
Right. Without the centralizing gravity of Abdülgafar Khan, the constituent parts naturally begin to drift.
The source explains how various factions align themselves with different surviving noble houses based on their own immediate political and geographic interests.
It's a long process of political reorganization. The original confederation disperses, and over generations, those factions integrate into the emerging power centers around them.
They assimilate into the political structures of the Tatars, the Bashkirs, the Kazakhs, the Kyrgyz, the Nogais, and the Uzbeks.
Yes, their genetic and cultural heritage doesn't vanish. It becomes woven into the foundational fabric of practically every modern state in the region.
But what happens to the core? What happens to the people who refuse to assimilate into those new political centers and insisted on maintaining that original ancient Kara identity?
Well, according to the Newspheric mission's conclusions, the Karakalpak people are among the rare groups who preserve their most ancient name, their continuous shezhire, and their spiritual code through centuries of intense imperial pressure.
While other groups just continuously adopted the names of whatever dynasty was currently ruling them.
Exactly. The Karakalpaks held onto their foundational identifier.
So what does this all mean? Because holding on to that internal code carries a massive external cost.
It does?
If we look at the geopolitical reality today, and we are just neutrally relaying the source's exact perspective here without taking a side, Karakalpakstan is not an independent state on the world map today. It is a republic within Uzbekistan.
Right. And the Newspheric mission frames this current political status in a very specific philosophical way. They suggest this reality might be a historical penalty.
A historical penalty for preserving their spiritual purity. And they use a Russian proverb to illustrate this, right?
Yes. A holy place is never empty.
Meaning you are responsible for your own fate? How does that proverb actually apply to statehood, though?
Well, it implies a sort of law of geopolitical physics. If you prioritize the protection of your internal sacred identity, your holy place, over the ruthless, pragmatic game of imperial expansion and assimilation, you inevitably leave a vacuum in the realm of hard political power.
And in geopolitics, vacuums are always filled by someone else.
Exactly. The New Spheric mission suggests the Karakalpaks essentially accepted the consequences of prioritizing their soul over their borders.
They chose spiritual integrity, and the penalty for that choice in a world governed by empires is the loss of independent status on a map.
This raises an important question about the danger of historical distortion. Revisiting history like this isn't about rewriting the past or disparaging others, right?
Right.
It's about illuminating truths that were shortened or suppressed by the victors. When a ruling dynasty controls the narrative, they suppress opposing histories, and they reduce complex democratic systems like the Council of Beys to footnotes.
And they label rightful, capable leaders as false cons to legitimize their own assassinations. Uncovering this history is about recovering the lost data from that cultural blockchain. So, just to pull all these threads together for you, we started with the remarkable linguistic endurance of the ancient Kara identifier, preserved over millennia through those rigid oral shezhire-codes.
Then we examined the highly advanced democracy of Beys.
Right, a system where military leverage provided a real-time check on absolute power. We looked at the immense logistical achievement of Abdülgafar Khan's 12-day victory in 1603 and the economic mastery of claiming Tashkent.
Which was followed by the tragic reality of his sleep assassination and the resulting propaganda war.
And finally, we explored the philosophical trade-off of maintaining a sacred spiritual code at the cost of modern geopolitical independence.
It really demonstrates that survival in history takes multiple forms. You have the survival of the state, and you have the survival of the identity.
And the Karakalpak story argues that internal codes outlast external validation, which brings us right back to where we started, looking at those comforting, solid lines on a modern map.
We rely on those lines to tell us who is who and what is permanent.
But lines are just ink. Empires rise, they fracture into new dynasties, and the ink is constantly redrawn. The actual substance of a people is carried in the things that don't fit on a map.
Beautifully put.
So we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. In our modern era of information overload and shifting global borders, if the borders of your country were erased from the map tomorrow, if all the external geopolitical validations simply vanished, what is the shezhire, the unbreakable cultural or spiritual code of your own community, that would actually survive?
When people live close to each other, they exchange ideas. When ideas spread, knowledge grows. When knowledge grows, submission awakens.
Muraplar aldı tilleni, mollalar ayttı böleni. Kazbay жылдағы salmanı, su tamtarыс болды быйыл. Su келмеді көк шыққанда, әтші құслар шақырғанда, жапларға шығыр құрғанда, су тартылып қалды биыл. Жүз өткенде егін ектік, қарық жарып қауын тіктік, ақыры түйнек жедік, жаманлыққа түсті биыл. Су келмеді атызларға, uçkanda, etçök kuşlar şakırganda, şaplarga şığır kurganda, su tartılıp kaldı bu yıl. Жүз өткенде егін ектік, қарық жарып қауын тіктік, ақыры ит түйнек жедік, жаманлыққа түсті биыл. Су келмеді атызларға, әспек болды күші барға. Ақсақ мұрат қара қарға, билерменен жүрді биыл. Жерлеріміз болды аяқ, сағашсақ жедік таяқ. Мұрат болып өңшең саяқ, құралақан қалдық биыл. Болмады ешкімін жуық, егінлерді ұрды суық. Барын ішіп ашыды қуық, жаман ашлық болды биыл. Аштан өлді неше адам, суыққа да бермей шыдам. Ашлық болды кетпей мудам, оннан дағы өтті биыл. Қоян жылы жақынлады, жылқы жылда халық шулады. Қорқып жүрегім сулады, сондай қиын болды биыл. Шегіртке жеді арпаны, қалды тозаңғып топаны. Айырып келіп қопаны, қабанда жау болды биыл. Аман қоймай осы халға, көп адамды салып жолға. Қазуға айдады бәрі, сүргіншілік болды биыл. Бардық қазуға азықсыз, жедік таяқты жазықсыз. Байлауда тұрдық қазықсыз, қазу ауыр болды биыл. Жылайды алды шаққаны, таусылып кімнің тақаны. Тиді мұраптың бақаны, қазу қиын болды биыл. Жүр жалаң аяқ, халы оның қалай Намыслер болды